I think the confidence that my parents showed in me at that point in time, I still remember my father telling me, no matter what decision whatever you decide, we are with you. Mains, I think the first thing that one has to know is how to structure an answer. Know the demand of the question, produce what is asked in the question, not what one knows. There's this distinction needs to. The second is knowing how to structure, understanding the different subparts of the question and structuring the question accordingly. Third is writing briefly. So here revision is of key. You revise specific portions multiple times so that you can bring specificity into your answer. And along with that, to bring that specific life, I think having a good peer group in whatever stage of life that you are at influences you, be it in a positive or negative way. That depends upon the person concerned. The weather was and is now becoming again excellent. For a brief period, the weather of Bangalore, as everyone said, nazar lag gayi thi weather ko, but now again it rained today. So because of the stability and the continuity in the weather patterns in Bangalore, I think that boosts efficiency a lot. India for IAS was the only in-person mock interview that I had done. So it has an instrumental role to play. And secondly, sir, I think Kedar sir was a big influence, motivating factor, person who pushed me, who made me believe that, I'm capable of so much more.
Hello everybody, a warm welcome once again. Here we are with one other achiever, an achiever who has had a journey of her own. Welcome to Diya Das Gupta. Thank you so much for coming along with us.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
Diya has had a journey that is worth inspiring and a journey that any student would love to have. Let's understand the journey of Diya through the idea of civil services, her dreams, her aspirations, and how would she want to take this journey forward. Again, Diya, so we would want to understand the idea of civil services that stuck to your mind, your entire journey through as such. But to start with, walk through your journey, your childhood, your schooling, and how did it go about?
So I was born and brought up in Kolkata. I did my schooling from Calcutta Girls High School. I do not come from a civil services background as such. My father is a doctor, my mother is a teacher. But in that way, it's quite conventional in Bengal to either choose medicine or engineering as the future course of action, as a professional journey, if I may put it like that. However, when I was in my 11th grade, I was quite sure that I wanted to pursue law. So accordingly, I took preparations for CLAT, and in my first attempt, I made it into National Law University, Odisha. That's where I did my graduation from. So even that was slightly of an unconventional decision in my family, but one where I received utmost support. My parents always have been very supportive. They have confidence in whatever decisions I make, and there's something which my father keeps telling me, and I think that is a very important sense of empowerment that I received. He kept telling me that there's no right or wrong decision. You need to make a decision and then you need to work at it, for it, to channelize it towards the right trajectory. So that stuck with me, and I was always very conscious that I'm responsible for all my decisions. Towards the end of law school was where I had quite of a how to put it, sir. It was a very mind-boggling situation that I was in. There was water crisis at law school, I remember. One fine day, some situation had occurred. The girls' hostel was completely out of water supply. I'm telling you how I got inspired to move from law. I mean, I can't say move from law because law is entrenched in every aspect of the civil services, but how I decided to pursue UPSC. By the end of law school, I already had a pre-placement offer from one of the tier 1 law firms in the country. But still I decided to pursue the civil services, and I had a very concrete reason for that. So the reason was there was water shortage in the girls' hostel one day, and we had to travel to the boys' hostel, get water from there in buckets. and our rooms were in the fourth floor of the girls' hostel. Carry it all the way up there were no lift services, etc. That was when I started researching issues of water crisis in Odisha, and I had come across an IS officer who was serving as a district magistrate in one of the districts in Odisha, and through his innovative thinking and ingenuity, he had facilitated supply of water in a village which did not even have electricity, just using simple laws of physics, how something moves from a higher level to a lower level, and using the motion of springs which were there in that area. That simple act, the way it impacted the lives of so many villagers, and the freedom of creativity that came along with the job, that was what which inspired me significantly to pursue the civil services, sir.
Wonderful, wonderful to hear that idea of how did you pick up. Let's break that into parts and understand that a little more.
Sure, sir.
Now, the general idea of Bengal that we all carry, specifically down south, is a place which had an immense contribution from the time history and freedom struggle, very revolutionary place from great leaders that India has seen as such. So, at least the notion that I have about Bengal is the Bengal children are taught about which football club you have to support to and which party you have to vote to. That's how strong is ideology that comes to Bengal. And very interesting when you said that the general notion of career is about either medicine or engineering, which also is the case in Bangalore. So, how did this idea of law come in? That while you're pursuing your education and you're doing something out of track, as you said.
Yes, sir.
So, how did this idea of law come through?
So I think in this arena, the school has a big role to play. And when I say role, I mean the exposure that a school gives to its kids. My school gave me opportunities of having and participating in a lot of debates and a lot of Model United Nations competitions, where I found that I was quite comfortable in my skin when I was engaging in public speaking. And gradually, slowly, steadily, I fell completely in love with the idea of public speaking. And I knew that one of the greatest thrills that a 16-15-year-old girl, me, had at that time was putting my point across in a way that the person sitting across felt convinced. I had a few friends with whom I often participated in debate competitions. One or two of them were senior to me, and they were pursuing CLAT at that time. So it was just puzzles fitting in and forming a bigger picture, I think, in retrospect.
Great. So the idea comes in very nicely. But from your schooling, you said you were from a girls' school.
Yes, sir.
So the general notion of a girls' school that around is how would you want to put it? You are a very studious, you are a very notorious girl, somebody who wanted to achieve. How do you see now that younger Diya that if you see today?
I think I did enjoy my schooling a lot, and so in my school I was the school captain, and so even in the junior school I was the school president. So I don't know, maybe it was through as and when I went up the ladder in the school days, somehow that sense of leadership became a part of me, if I may put it like that, and that kind of brought up a sense of responsibility that I had, not only towards myself, my academics and my co-curricular activities, but also towards the other students. And overall, I would say I was a combination of being studious, and I was very much into sports. I had been trained under the East Zone Academy of Pulella Gopichand back at school. So for me, studies and badminton was what my school was all about.
Achha. Great. So a very good mix of studies, sports, and when you also say debating, a lot of co-curriculum that has come in. So we also see a lot of leadership. So you've seen as a multidimensional personality growing through the school itself.
Thank you.
So now you take up law.
Yeah.
And while you're pursuing law, you said there were some incidents which actually done. But when exactly did the idea of civil services strike? Was it exactly that incident that happened in the Law University or some time before? What were the influence that your parents left on you?
My parents I would want to start with that question. My parents always ensured that I was fueled with a lot of confidence. As I said, simple mantra that no decision is right or wrong. You take a decision, and that's where I think a lot of kids falter or they feel apprehensive about taking decisions. So they told me that whatever it is, whether you want to choose law, whether you want to do UPSC, whatever, you have to take a decision and then you have to work towards making it right. I think that was one great sense of empowerment that I had received, and something that my father also made sure. His mom, my grandmother, she was also a very empowering woman. My mother had gotten married when she was 18 or 19 years old. She completed her higher studies at her in-laws' place. But my grandma, she was very focused on the fact that my mother should eventually ensure that she's financially independent. And that is taking that forward. My father had said that one of his goals in life was to ensure that my sister-in-law and I take it a notch above. So in that way, they are very empowering people. And from my mother, I think the resilience that everyone says that I have, the perseverance that was required, and the patience that was required for this UPSC journey, I don't think it would have been possible without the resilience that I had seen in my mother growing up. I mean, she learned to drive at the age of 50, and every day she drives to school. She's a teacher. She drives to and fro from her workplace. So these are small instances, I think, which keep a child fueled from within.
So that influence that has come to you very much as such. So when you look back and that incident which actually strikes and the idea of civil services that you struck, you look back today, how important was that idea, and today having achieved that, would you give that importance, or was there somebody whom you see as a role model and you wanted to become that?
So I think that idea was more predominant in my life, and somehow or the other, some friends that I have had along the journey, they also played a crucial role in my life. I think having a good peer group in whatever stage of life that you are at influences you, be it in a positive or negative way. That depends upon the person concerned. So my best friend at that point in time, she was making up her mind to pursue the civil services. Again, another puzzle that I would say, looking back, I had that incident that I looked upon, and overall I felt that this was the striking part about this particular line of services is that the effort that one puts in to an extent ensures a lot of job satisfaction, and secondly, we can see the change very tangibly in front of us. For instance, that incident where water was supplied to a village, it ensured that the villagers did not have to walk perhaps 5 kilometers a day just to get water. That transformed the lives of women that were there present in that village, and that change can be seen very tangibly, and I think that is where the individual gets a lot of job satisfaction. And very early on in my life, through certain experiences, I had promised this to myself, that no matter whichever profession I choose and I pursue, I'm going to gain, and I'm going to make sure that I gain a lot of satisfaction from the job, and wanted my passion and my profession to merge. I think this was the perfect front for it.
Okay, so you've chosen law by interest, and that was something that was your choice, which was out of turn choice. And with that, you've also pursued LLM now.
Yes, sir.
And the idea of civil services has also carried along.
Yes, sir.
So which one would you give preference upon?
So I think both of them work very well together. For instance, being a lawyer by training till now, because I've not yet received the civil services training, that has sensitized me to a lot of finer legal nuances that keep happening around me. For instance, the other day I was at my workplace, and some person who was very distressed because of some issue he was having with his credit card. And he came up to me, and at that point in time, though I'm not a specialist in consumer law, but I had the basic idea of that subject, and I explained it to him. right? And I intend to carry these small readings, learnings, etc. into my civil services too. There would be people who would be coming up to me having different types of problems, and helping them out is one of the many joys of life. So I think both of them merge together.
Great. So, a journey through civil services, you've gone through multiple attempts, you have seen the ups and downs of civil services. Finally, the result happened. That moment which you waited for quite some time arrived. So, walk us through that moment when you finally understood that your name is there in that result list.
Yes.
What was your job?
So the anticipation of the results were building up, I remember, since Friday. I think it was 12th. And everyone was expecting that, okay, the results might come on Friday. And it did not. But then that in anticipation, I felt that waiting for the results was much more excruciating than actually writing the exam and going and doing the interview and everything. Because all throughout my exam process, right, the exam journey, I had imbibed this thing that I call passionate detachment. I was very passionately involved with every step of the exam process, but I had trained myself somehow to be detached from the outcome. And I think this is a survival technique for people who are in the UPSC journey. If you want to, see the other side, I think that passionate detachment takes away the stress. But when that result moment came in, like we knew that, okay, it might come out any day, I think that period was quite painful. Anticipation, loss of sleep, and there was a lot of tension. Then the Monday came in, and then again there were rumors that, okay, maybe the results could come today, and again it did not. And I remember, I think I took a work from home also on the Monday, because I did not want to face a lot of people at work, because everyone would keep asking me, are the results out yet? I did not want to face that conversation. Tuesday, anyway, I knew I had to go to work, can't keep taking work from home and all of that, right? So I did go into work, but by that day it was quite sure that the results would come out. And I remember that I was very tense, and my laptop was open in front of me, and the tab of UPSC results were also open. And I remember that exact moment when the results popped up in front of me, and I think the time froze for me for a second. I quickly searched my name, and when I saw my name was there, I think that was I did have tears in my eyes, because I think it was a release of a lot of pent up emotions at that point in time. I mean, seeing my tears, people around me thought I'd failed. Yeah. So I called up my parents, one of my friends, and informed them about the results. And
what were your parents' reaction?
So first I called up my mom, and I told her about the results, and I was emotional. Hearing my voice, she thought there's something wrong. Again, I told her no, I cleared. And then I think it took a second for it to seep into her also, and then she also started crying. Then I remember I called my dad. He was in his hospital at this point in time. And I remember actually manifesting this moment a lot, that I really wanted to call my parents and I wanted to tell them that I had done it, because I was far away from them. They are in Kolkata, I was in Bangalore. So I remember that, and there's still tears in my eyes. It was that emotional. So I called up my dad, and then I told him that, yeah, it's done. And then again, even he had a sense of relief. So after that, I remember once this was done, I put my phone on silent, and I think I went off to sleep.
To live that moment for some time. You went off to sleep?
Yeah.
Okay.
My friends had come over to my workplace. That day I just applied for a half day. Achha. And I went with my friends. We ate some food, and I was so tired actually, that as I told you, that anticipation of the results and everything, I put my phone on silent and I just went off to sleep. And I remember I have never received so many calls or messages ever in my life at the same time. The next 2 days were utilized in returning those calls actually.
So great. Now that's success, and you've given us a very detailed idea about how did you actually savor that moment much. But probably it's also the right time to reflect upon that having gone through some attempts to reach that moment, there would be moments where you would have seen through, if not failures, we call them disqualifications.
Absolutely.
And after interview, after prelims, after mains. So, was there a moment where you felt, I'm done? Law was my core interest, I'll continue, I'm done. Was there some moment like that?
Surprisingly, no. So, as I told you, my parents aren't from the civil services background, and the culture of civil services a couple of years back also was not that prominent. Ironically, because some of the first civil servants of the country were from Bengal, the culture has gone down significantly. But right now, again, I can see that it's rising, up and coming. The government is taking brilliant initiatives in the state too for civil services. So, after my last failure, and that failure was because of CSAT. I was clearing the GS part of prelims by like a margin of about 15 to 20 marks, and CSAT I had missed by maybe 2 marks or something, and that was very heart breaking. And this failure was after my failure of the interview. In my second attempt, I had gone till the interview stage and couldn't find my name in the rank list. So it was not something that my parents could rationalize very easily, and all parents look out for the welfare of their child, the security and stability. So they suggested that it's done, now you move on, you go back to law. But then that was where I had to really convince them. I remember that I just gotten my results, I knew that I was not clearing, and instead of processing my emotions, I just had to tell my parents that it's fine, I need one more shot, and you need to trust me. That was when my mother suggested that, okay, fine, I think you go ahead with it, but try to see if you can finish off your LLM along with it. And I think that was a brilliant idea from my mother's side, because it's something that I really want to stress upon. Having a game plan for this exam and having an exit strategy is very important. By game plan, I mean, no matter which stage of the exam you are at, one should know exactly how many attempts you're going to use for this exam. And exit strategy meaning plan B. So I knew that if my LLM was done, it would be easier for me to go back to law in case UPSC didn't work out. So it was very tough, I would say, balancing all of these things. I was working, I was doing my masters, and I was also preparing for the exam. So balancing all of that, I don't know. I mean, last year looks like a blur to me. I don't think I can once again repeat it though, but yeah, that's how it all worked out.
Great. So you've entered the realm of civil services understanding. Before getting more detailed into the idea of prelims, mains, your strategies, your ups and downs, and all that, to close on this initial part, if there's one person whom you want to say that this was something that was brilliant that happened, which actually allowed me to get into civil services, whom you do credit to? Your parents, a teacher, somebody, or some specific thing that happened?
So I actually believe in the idea that every success actually requires a village. A village pushes you forward, and that's how you move ahead. I think the same happened with me. There's no one person as such, but at very instrumental points in life, I think these people were God sent. My parents' push and confidence. I still remember the day I decided to turn down an extremely lucrative offer to work in one of the best law firms in the country. And that decision, ironically, I had to take all by myself because my father was in the hospital at that point in time. All these important decisions I generally discuss with my father, and he had just had a surgery, so he wasn't in the state that he could, walk me through this decision that, okay, I'm a 23-year-old, I am turning down an extremely good job, and I'm moving into the sea of uncertainty. But then again, decision had to be taken. I think the confidence that my parents showed in me at that point in time, I still remember my father telling me, no matter whatever you decide, we are with you. I think these few lines from parents, they fill a child with so much confidence, so much hope, and willingness to work hard. I think that came in at a very right point in my life. Then my friends, my best friends, like my friends who we've been friends since like the last 12, 13 years, we were together in Bangalore preparing. And I think that provided so much support. Uh, there were people who provided that right sense of balance in my life. Initially, I think I used to be a little tilted towards just doing one thing at one time. And that kind of, I think if you're too attached to just one thing on the D day, I think you might have performance anxiety. There's this friend of mine who helped me to balance out stuff, and that is why I think I could do the 3 activities that I was doing during the last year. So great thanks to him. So all of these and yeah, how can I forget my team at my law school, my work team. Oh, they were so brilliant. They've supported and celebrated every success that I've had, as I would have celebrated if I were back at home. So all of them have to be thanked. And also my mentors taught me to celebrate failures also. So all of them together.
Awesome. Very, 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 very thoughtful to hear that. So, before we get into the clear segment ahead, if there is one question that comes to you and say, the general idea any teacher would at initial point of time give a student is, don't keep your foot in 2 boats, concentrate on 1 boat, do it very well, because 2 boats is not taking in. But then in your final part of your journey, you're focusing on civil services, you're also doing an LLM, you're also working. So, if there is a yes or no answer or a one-line answer to say 2 boats at once or 1 boat at once.
I would again bring in a combination of both. When a student is starting his or her preparation, I believe that he should know what he should fall back on. So that decision should be made. He needn't work on that decision right away. He should know what his plan B is, and he should be very strategic about it. After that is sorted, you walk on 1 boat, at least for the first 2 years of your attempt. Full focus on 1 boat. I think if you really work hard in the first 2 attempts, in case it doesn't work out, then eventually that you wouldn't require so many hours to be devoted just to the civil services. So the first 2 attempts could be done with just 1 leg in 1 boat. After that, in case it doesn't work out, one could contemplate having or working something, doing a small part-time job or a consultancy based job on the side, because I do believe in the concept of diminishing marginal utility. After a point in time, you don't have to give 12 hours a day to the civil services, and it's not even productive. Having something on the side not only refreshes the mind, it also takes away a lot of stress that a candidate usually puts on achieving that result that he desires.
Now, let's understand a little in detail about the idea of prelims, mains, and interview, the 3 stages that a civil services aspirant would love to hear. Her ups and downs, how did she face those ideas, what was the choices that she made, her optional tactics through the idea of essay, ethics, and further. So, yeah.
Yes,
So, the idea of civil services as a journey is, in one word, a tiring journey, a very excruciating journey, an enriching journey also. The 3 stages, prelims, mains, and interview, very scientifically designed to test any aspirant's objective, subjective, and the personality as such. So, how different was your approach to each one of them?
So I think when it comes to prelims, hands down, I believe it, for me, one of the most difficult stages of the exam. I till date did, I know that, and I think everyone can guarantee to the fact that no matter whichever rank that you have received in the previous attempt, no one can guarantee that you would clear prelims the next time if by chance anyone's writing it. That's how difficult or challenging, I would say. I don't think difficult is the right word. I feel that every competitive exam has this pulse of its own, and if you can figure out that pulse, I think you're good to go. So for me, when I had failed my first prelims, I knew that I think I had missed out on the cutoff by some 5-6 marks. And I knew that, okay, there was some scientific and smart work that was required, because I'd worked really hard. So all these competitive exams, I think they actually require a combination of both hard work and smart work. Just hard work wouldn't do the trick. You require smart work. So I think the second attempt was where I had really, gotten myself down, and I'd picked up all the PYQs, the previous year questions. And I really believe that for this exam, previous year's questions is a Bible. And not just for prelims, but for mains also. So if one can really analyze the previous year questions diligently, find out certain areas from where questions are asked. For instance, in college or in school, generally people start studying the book and then they see the questions. For me, the approach was slightly different the second time around. I picked up the previous year's questions first. I studied the questions first and then I started reading the books. I think that gave me a very clear perspective as to what all had to be focused on more from whatever standard textbook that I was referring to. And on top of that, I knew that MCQ solving is also an aptitude. Just like answer writing is an aptitude, you need to have a flair for writing. I do believe that one needs to have a flair for solving MCQs. I've had friends who've been so confident about prelims that with 3 weeks of preparation, they'd be like so confident that yes, the GS part would be cleared without much effort. And I think they get that confidence because they have that flair or aptitude for MCQs. I, for one, did not. For 5 years of law school, I was trained to write, and I had written like so many exams. I was very hardwired in writing. But so I had to develop that aptitude for MCQs. So the only way to do it is by practicing MCQs. I ensured that as prelims was approaching, I had almost solved about 100 questions a day too, just in order to get my mind and the gray cells in my brain to look at MCQs and try to find out patterns and ways in which those could be solved easily. I think that had helped me, and that once I had gotten myself acquainted and familiarized and not daunted by MCQs, prelims was a doable task.
Great. So you've achieved a rank in a year where prelims was totally out of turn, probably with some of them calling it one of the toughest prelims with respect to the cutoffs going down. What was your way of doing it, or what do you think worked this year's prelims for you?
I think what worked out well was CSAT, and in retrospect, my failure in my previous prelims, which was because of CSAT. So because I had failed in CSAT, that year too was a very tough CSAT paper. I knew that though there was pressure from my family to stop the UPSC journey, but yeah, failing at CSAT is a place where one can't really hang up the boots. I mean, at least I couldn't, and that's where I decided that I had to become. I loved maths back at high school.
Maths. So
yeah,
that was my next question. So generally, when students choose arts and get into humanities background, they lose touch on maths. And there are students who choose arts for the reason that they don't like maths. So when you say I loved maths, that's interesting to hear.
yeah.
So for all of them who would be listening and would say, CSAT is my nightmare, what is your word of advice?
Practice. Yeah, so when I say I loved maths, again, that's because of my mum. My mum's a maths teacher, and when I was very young, she made me fall in love with numbers. So maths per se was not something that I was scared of. What I needed to do was see the kind of questions that they were asking in CSAT, gauge the difficulty level, and practice likewise questions of that difficulty level. Right. So that is how I proceeded. My focus was again, English was something, or reading comprehension was something that I was fairly decent at. I ensured that I practiced a lot of reading comprehension questions so that my accuracy was top notch there. So I remember, I think I must have made 1 or 2 errors in out of all the reading comprehension questions that I had done. Despite doing a lot of practice in maths and the quants part of CSAT, still I felt that the paper was quite challenging. So this again, my practicing full length papers in CSAT helped me a lot here, because you shouldn't get stuck at one question and spend like 5 minutes there. In case one question is you're not able to crack a question, you move ahead and pick and choose the easy questions and ensure that you're at a decent level. Maths and quants is something, if it's right, it's right. You can't really do a guesswork there. So I knew that once I was at a decent level, I did not want to attempt uselessly and get my get my marks below the cutoff level. That's how I.
Great. So, specific to prelims as such, now generally the notion is that science students would feel that, look, there are a lot of humanities subjects, so this is not my cup of tea and it's difficult. But our students feel, most of them who are clearing are engineering and science students, so they see it differently. Now, with interest in maths and as a humanities student, how do you see it?
I think I got the best of both worlds.
Achha. So, for those of engineering or science students who are looking at civil services, what would you advise? And for those art students or humanities students, what would you advise?
For students who come from a science background, I would say that ensure you really work hard for CSAT. I have known people who had maths as their optional papers for the mains, but then still they cleared the cutoff by cleared the CSAT cutoff by just 2 marks. So being a science background student does not guarantee that one will clear CSAT very easily. So don't neglect CSAT. With respect to the other papers like polity, environment, economy, I think that there is a scientific rationale towards any paper that you study. It's just your bent of mind, how you look at a particular problem. Be it polity, be it economy, I think really one can't categorize that it's an art-based paper, at least in the prelims stage. So study hard, that's it. And when it comes to the humanities-based students, this is where I would want to chip in and say practice a lot of MCQs. So MCQ, as I said earlier, is an aptitude. You need to develop that aptitude, and the way to do it is by solving a lot of MCQs.
So there is no easy go for the humanities students. You also have to work, and MCQ is something that you all have to solve. Keep solving.
And same for both, actually. Practice makes perfect.
Practice. Okay. So now that shifts to the next idea of mains. Now, the brilliant story with you, as we understand, is both the times when you've cleared prelims, you've reached the interview.
Yeah.
So mains has gone wonderful in that understanding. So, and in general understanding of the 3 stages, the most challenging stage is mains. Prelims does happen once you find the knack of it, but writing skill, time management is how. So how do you see mains? And what do you think worked for you in mains, both the times that you wrote?
Prima facie, mains was one area where I had a feeling that I'd perform well. Because as I told you, some students are hardwired from their graduation days. They're quite hardwired into writing. I was one of them. So writing was never an issue for me. But the skills I had to pick up was the kind of answers which are expected in the UPSC mains paper is slightly different from the ones which you do or you produce in your graduation subject, no matter what you are studying. So that was again a product of very rigorous answer writing practice. I remember there was, I think it was the year when COVID struck in, and I made a very conscious decision along with my flatmates. So we had decided that we'll stay in Bangalore, not go back home. That would be challenging because we had to do everything by ourselves, but that provided an environment where all of us did a lot of answer writing practice together. So mains, I think the first thing that one has to know is how to structure an answer. Know the demand of the question, produce what is asked in the question, not what one knows. This distinction needs to be made.
That's a primary distinction that we all say. So don't write what you know, write what the question demands.
Absolutely. The second is knowing how to structure, understanding the different subparts of the question and structuring the question accordingly. Third is writing briefly. Now this is where I faced a little bit of an issue because in law school, brevity was always appreciated, but in the UPSC CSE exam, I think in the mains part of it, brevity is of utmost importance. You need to be very precise. The points that you're writing must not be ideally. For me, that was the thumb rule. the points for every subpart should not exceed 3 lines, 2 lines of explanation, 1 line for example. So this was my thumb rule, which I practiced and practiced till it became a part of my muscle memory, I think. So that is where the mains, I think, along with this practice, again, as I had told, PYQs is the Bible there. I think I had a jump of, I had gotten 743 in my previous mains, just the written part. And this time I had a jump to 810. And I think the jump was possible because of an extra edge that I gained by very rigorous PYQ analysis. So as I was working, I did not have a lot of time to write as many answers I had written in the previous attempt. But this time what I used to do is I used to take up PYQs after having revised the subject, and I used to try to structure the answers in my brain within like 30 seconds. And I think this stimulated my brain to do a lot of brainstorming in a crunch time, and that helped me in the exam.
So we call that brainstorming or processing. So what we are trying to say is, don't get only answer and as such. Rather, however, when you're studying a concept, do that processing in mind. So
Absolutely.
How do I present? How do I comment?
Absolutely.
That is something that would help on a regular.
Exactly. So
wonderful. So specifics now in terms of 4 GS papers and 1 essay paper. You said that you're hardwired into writing and your law school studies, they definitely help you as such. But somebody who comes from a science background, or even from a humanities or a commerce background, writing skill doesn't come very easily. And to write answers, brief, what would be your one-line advice?
I think there are a lot of copies of different toppers available online. Pick a few of them, not copy them, but understand how answers are generally written. I think, as you said, that some people who come from the science background might face difficulty in expressing themselves. I think this can be used to their advantage. As I said, brevity is of utmost importance. If you feel difficulty in expressing yourself like a lot, they might have difficulties in the essay and ethics paper, but at least for GS 1, 2, 3 would be areas where they would shine, because you would just have to write to the point and very pertinent substance. So here revision is of key. You revise specific portions multiple times so that you can bring specificity into your answer, and along with that, to bring that specificity, you need to do PYQ analysis.
Great. So a lot of PYQ analysis, some toppers copies which will help you get an idea in how things work. Specific now to essay, how to choose topics, or yes, you have spoken about the structure and content that come out. Generally now in the last few years, you're looking at the number of topics which are more abstract increasing. So what should be the idea when students choose topics?
I think the predominant rule of thumb is comfort. One should not choose a topic thinking that this one is going to be the least chosen topic amongst the 8, and hence my chance of scoring or my essay standing out would be high. Might work in some cases, but it might backfire too. So when one chooses a topic, the rule of thumb is comfort with that particular topic and having 100% clarity of understanding each and every word in that topic. Sometimes quite tough words are used in the essay topic itself. One should not choose the topic by feeling that okay, he or she understands it like at a 75% level. No. You understand the topic, what the examiner is asking of you completely, that's when you proceed with the topic. That's, I think, the first thing to do. Second, to the extent possible, choose slightly different topics for both sections and try to introduce 2 different styles of writing also for section A and section B. So I knew that my way of introduction, I had these strategies predetermined, pre-prepared. My introductions for both essays would be slightly different. I knew that. One would be perhaps a little bit of say an anecdote based, but I was very pertinent on the fact that my anecdotes were real life anecdotes, not hypothetical anecdotes at all. Maybe a real life anecdote which is slightly uncommon, And the second essay, then I would make it a little descriptive by perhaps starting with a reference to a book, because I had read up quite a lot. So that would be my strategy. If one is a little bit argumentative, the second essay would be a little descriptive, a little analytical. So this is how I try to ensure that I captured the examiner's attention across both the essays.
Wonderful. So when you put forward your thoughts through, and when any young aspirant listens to this, he definitely would get an idea of how do you choose topic and what is the perspective as such. But for some of them, in spite of writing good essays as they perceive it to be and get very low marks, what change would you suggest? Or at that moment, what is that they would need to do differently?
Okay. So here, few things can be done, right? Number one, firstly, pick up essay every Sunday and write it. And writing, again, practice makes you closer to being perfect. I think the second thing that has to be done is avoid using too flowery a language.
Jargon-based
Yes.
language.
I used to tell this to myself. Perhaps if being a Bengali, I would use Rabindranath Tagore's reference. He is one person who's extremely creative, and his ideas sometimes require time to decode. But I think, again, my personal view is, if today you are trying to write something very abstract in your paper, which perhaps a 10th grader could not understand, that might not fetch you very good marks. So be to the point, make it extremely simple, lucid, clear, grammatically correct English, and if possible, make like 5 of your friends read that essay. If you have a young brother at home, a 10th grader, someone, nephew, give it to them and ask them to read it, and ask them whether they are able to understand what you are trying to convey. I think once it has received acceptance from people of different age groups, you know that you are in the safe zone. Whatever you are trying, or you think you are trying to portray, is being received by the person on the other end.
Wonderful. So that's a lot of thought in terms of how you're putting through the ideas. This is definitely going to help all the young aspirants as they take in. Now, specifically coming into the GS papers as such, the general studies that we see, do you think humanities students do carry a genuine advantage when they talk about polity or international relations of GS papers, or for that matter, some amount of economics?
If they've studied it in their graduation subject, as their graduation subject, that maybe yes. But we see so many stellar candidates coming from engineering backgrounds as well. I think the reason it's called general studies, because it's a core component of general knowledge, which you have to just study in a certain way. I don't think it's very difficult to pick up.
Great. Right. So, irrespective of the graduation, if you are able to pick up the idea and if you're able to put it as the question demands,
Yeah.
specifically coming to the idea of ethics, and that's something that demands a certain amount of application, certain amount of understanding, because there's no subject that we study anywhere that comes altogether fresh. There's nothing right and wrong in ethics. How was your preparation for ethics? How did you see ethics differently? Also, as a lawyer yourself.
Yeah, I remember in our fifth year, 10th sem, we had a paper on professional ethics, like an altogether subject in one of our semesters. So ethics again was something which came a little naturally to me, because again, a little bit of an analysis of previous year toppers and some standard sources that I referred to. I figured something out, and that was any person, be it our parents, if they are presented with the ethics paper, they can also write an ethics paper. They can solve all the questions there. What sets one apart is his ability to be precise in his articulation and expression, solving the case studies effectively, and bringing in those unique examples that one has to do to stand out. So I think I worked extensively on collecting good examples and preparing crisp definitions, starting with all the keywords which is given in the ethics syllabus itself. So my job was to identify all the keywords which are first given in the GS4 syllabus, prepare good definitions for it. For instance, very crisp one-liner definitions, because the same thing, for example, attitude can be defined in 5 lines, but you can actually effectively define it in exactly 7 words. So getting to that zone requires a little bit of effort. For every keyword, I had prepared about 5 examples. So those examples would be 2 from the lives of leaders, past and present, 2 from the lives of serving civil servants, past or present.
So a lot of background preparation has gone by
Yes.
in terms so that you make yourself very realistic,
Exactly.
not too theoretical.
And I had even prepared examples from my personal life, which I would be using in my paper.
Writing.
Yes. So all of this were pre-prepared. So my job in the exam
Personal
hall.
life comes naturally.
Yeah.
But when you talk about real life examples or also something that you would, what was the source of preparation?
The internet, some standard books, newspapers. So I had just fine-tuned my approach towards everything around me. I tried to look at everything around me from the perspective of how I can use it in my exam. So hypothetically, if I came across a good quote as a pop-up when I was studying, when I was searching something on the internet, then I immediately used to jot it down. Or for instance, I am using Instagram for that matter, and I come across a very inspiring set of lines. I take a screenshot of it, and I remember creating folders in my phone, GS1, GS2, GS3 and GS4. I used to put these screenshots in the relevant folders, and that is how I collated a lot of examples from here and there.
So that looks like a lot of your, your daily life, your routine, everything has been going back to where can I use this, where can I use this. And you say you take screenshots, you make folders out of it. So you've lived through the idea of civil services exam through all your routines
Yes,
as such.
yes, that's true.
Okay, that's great. So now specifics as such to the idea of current affairs. Now, be it prelims or mains, current affairs becomes very critical. And the general question or kind of dilemma that many people face is, we as tutors tell them that, look, you have to study newspaper yourself, make good notes out of it, combine. There are some, like what I call as fast foods available in terms of compilations, and students become dependent on the compilations. As a student yourself, as an aspirant, as a student, as a successful achiever now, what is your thought? Reading newspaper diligently, making good notes out of it and working through, or don't break your head much, go to the compilations, pick them up, read them diligently, make them up, or a combination of both?
I've always gone with a combination of both. I think you would have seen that in all the the entire course of conversation that we've had, because I really don't believe in following just one thing. I did read the newspapers daily, but here I used a little bit of my own innovation. I used to put a stopwatch of 40 minutes in front of me. So I knew that newspapers had to be done in 40 minutes. That was hardwired into me. And
that is after your one attempt, two attempt, or from your first attempt itself?
Maybe not from the first month of my first attempt, but when I was 6 months into my preparation, I knew that spending 2 hours or 3 hours daily on newspapers was taking away a lot of self-study and revision time. So I needed to alter some of my strategies. That's when I decided, and this is how I followed it, and I still do. First thing, I never read the newspaper in the first thing of the day. I was always an early riser, and when the first few hours of the morning were the most productive. I did not want to waste my productive hours. I wouldn't say waste, but utilize a chunk of my productive hours into newspaper reading. So newspaper was the last thing that I did every day. I used to put up a timer of 40 minutes, and in that 40 minutes, the first 10 minutes I used to go through all the headlines. Try to scan out, because by that time I had a hang of the important news which would be relevant to the exam. I used to go through the headlines. If anything is relevant, I would dig a little deeper into it, else move on. So that would get done within, say, 15 minutes. Max 10 to 15 minutes would be the headlines perusal. After that, I used to move on to the editorials. If I came across any editorial which I felt could be useful for mains, again what I did was I used to highlight it. Maybe even write, okay, this is a good point. I used to make small notes on the paper itself, write 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be the points for me. and I used to take a screenshot of it. And again, I used to put it in my folder. I used to regularly ensure that the folder, whatever is there in my folder, does not become a huge mountain of material. But I used to regularly update my notes with the screenshots that I had prepared. But this way, I managed to ensure that I did not spend a lot of time making notes out of newspapers, but I was abreast with whatever is happening in the current affairs. Same in the similar way, I had good content from editorials also. I did also go through certain compilations. I think that helped me feel more confident about current affairs.
So it gave you an idea of what you were doing were right, and you picked up
Yes.
some things which were additional
Absolutely.
as such. Wonderful. So to all young aspirants who are thinking about current affairs, this probably is a wonderful strategy. The first 1, 2, 3 months, the time that you're putting on newspaper is a good investment. So don't worry about spending 1 or 2 hours on the newspaper. And then time yourself very much, don't break too much,
Yeah.
and then balance your time very well. Wonderful. Now let's come to the optional part of it. A law student, 5 years into law, why not law as an option?
I had done 5 years of law, and I really wanted to. It was not that I was bored of law or anything, because that's a common perception when people hear that I chose political science as one of my optional subjects. No, I was always very ingrained in law, and I started working from 2019 onwards, which was again in law. So I was always in touch with law, but I think international relations is something that my Munning days, when I used to do Model United Nation competitions in school, was something which had really fascinated me. And eventually, when I started preparing for the civil services, I had thought, or I told myself that I wanted IFS as my first preference. But I think that changed, and it changes for a lot of people also. Eventually, when you study about India at such great details, you would want to sometimes be in India and work for the people there. So when it comes to, I had BA LLB as my BA LLB honors was my degree. So I had already studied a large chunk of political science at law school.
Political science was one of your
subjects there. So when I saw the syllabus, I saw that it was something different. It was something that I already done. A small chunk of it though, but I had already done a segment of political science. The syllabus seemed to be something that I could finish it off within the stipulated period of time that I had. And I did know of a group of people who also had political science as their optional, and that helped me because I would have someone to read the answers. If a peer group is there with respect to the optional, I think it becomes slightly easier.
Great. So you had a path through which you chose your optional. To all young aspirants who would want to know how to choose an optional, where there are general notions that you have to pick up anthropology, you have to pick up PSIR, they are very well going optionals. Some options like geography or public administration are not doing well, so don't pick them up. Some kind of notions as such that are surrounded. What is your word of advice?
I think the predominant factor should be interest. One should not pick up an optional one is not at all interested in, just running after marks, because then that runs dry. You wouldn't be able to score high, you wouldn't be able to bring in those finer nuances of innovation that one can bring in. That's how one stands out in his or her optional paper, right? So first is the element of interest. Go through the different optionals that are there, which you feel are options for you. See if it interests you. Second is, to the extent possible, see if there is some overlap from your graduation subject. I mean, I know and I understand that might not be possible every time, but some of it can be done. You can figure it out. Okay, maybe a segment of it you had read somewhere, if not directly in your graduation, but as an extra reading somewhere, and you have interest. I think interest is a predominant factor. The second one is the finiteness of the optional. One needs to ensure that you have a stipulated period of time. Your job is to get good marks in that optional, so it should not be extremely vast. And in your mind, you can figure out a timeline within which you can do the different first reading and the subsequent revision rounds of that optional. And the third one is an avenue, or I would say a framework present for practicing and constant evaluation of answers that you would write for your optionals.
Great. So, any option for that matter, interest, finiteness in terms of realize that you want to score, not fall in love and become something
Yes,
in
yes,
that line.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
third is in terms of all practice that you put into the option as such. How important do you think the optional choice worked for you very much?
Oh, I think it did a good enough job because, again, that jump from 743 to 810 happened because of optional 2. So it was a jump of about 25 marks for me this time. Last time I had scored around 252, 25, 20 marks. This time I scored about 274 or
That's a
272.
considerable jump.
Yeah. So that happened because, and from some of the things that I have realized, like what worked well for me is I really worked hard in preparing introductions and conclusions for different topics of my optionals. And again, that was possible because of PYQ analysis. So I think that helped me a lot.
Wonderful. So we'll now get to the last stage, which is the interview, and probably the stage that twice that you've gone through and you've achieved success once. Walk us through your interview preparation, also the idea of your first interview and the second interview.
I think the difference that I had in my approach in both the interviews was in the second interview I was slightly nerves was absent, whereas in the first time when you're going before the panel, I think everyone's a little nervous. Second, the first time I had gone in for my interview, it was the COVID year, so I literally had no practice of doing live mocks. I was always doing some mocks or the other over webcam. But this time I did do a few mock practices where the panel was present, and that I think helps because you feel more comfortable in your skin. I think being a female candidate, one needs to be very comfortable in whatever attire she's wearing, and I remember I was in Delhi at that time. It was peak winters, and I really wanted to be comfortable I had decided I would be wearing a sari. So I remember traveling through Delhi metro in saris so that I would feel so confident in the attire that I am sporting for that day. I think overall having a good image about how you feel about yourself on that D-Day makes a lot of difference. And obviously with respect to the preparation, it was like daily reading of the newspapers, even on the day of, because my interview was in the afternoon slot. So I read the newspaper in the morning. There could be probable questions asked. So daily reading of the newspapers, discussions with friends helped a lot on any topic for that matter, especially controversial topics, how to handle such questions. Overall, this is how my preparation was.
Great. So when you compare the first interview and the second interview, what was different in this interview that actually made the crack happen?
I think in this interview, I managed to bring in, I felt quite satisfied and happy after the interview, and that was possible because I ensured that there was a slight moment of humor amongst the panel because they'd asked me a question, and it was a light question. They'd asked me cultural similarities between Kolkata and Odisha, I mean Bengal and Odisha for that matter. And I made a point that people of both the places, they love food, and food blogging was one of my interests also. So it was a light moment. Then there were very serious discussions. The very abstract questions also asked. I was asked a question to the tune that it was a long question which ended with this, that there was a quote during the war, I think the Israel-Iraq war, which said that the legality of the war is immoral, the morality of the war is illegal. So what do you think about it?
Correct.
So there were such abstract questions also. One very distinct point of distinction between my first and second interview. In my first interview, at least 60% of the questions were for my DAF. This time there were no questions from my DAF. I think this varies from board to board. No one can say that, okay, and it varies on a daily basis also about the questions which are asked. So that day there were no questions from my DAF. There were mostly the questions were from law, the recent judgments that were passed, because my
Spend
yeah.
considerable time in the law.
And there were a lot of questions from my LLM subject also, arbitration and dispute resolution.
Okay.
So that is where they had focused.
So there's
a
no
lot.
fixed game plan as
Yeah.
such. It can vary day to day.
I think the thing that is to be done is walk in without expecting any set of questions, because people do a lot of mocks. I was one of them, did a lot of mocks, but ensured that just because there's this line of questions that are asked in the mocks, almost every mock that I had done asked me about the 3 new criminal law bills which were rolled out. But in the actual interview, there were no such questions as such. So people tend to expect a certain pattern in which interview would be going, and when that doesn't happen, they might just feel a little unnerved. So it's best to walk into the interview hall without having any expectations.
The journey of civil services has seen a lot of ups and downs, and the role of mentors, the role of guides, the role of coaching centers also do play a role. How would you say India for IS played a role in your journey of civil services?
I think India for IAS provided me the much needed space for mock interviews. I remember the only full panel physical mock interview that I had done during my COVID year of attempt, where I had received no other mock interviews which were in person. India for IAS was the only in-person mock interview that I had done. So it has an instrumental role to play. And secondly, sir, I think Kedar sir was a big influence, motivating factor, person who pushed me, who made me believe that, I'm capable of so much more. So he used to always somehow look at me, and then he used to tell me that, you'll do great. And sometimes these words stick with you. And even when you are doubting your capabilities, somehow these words from such a senior person, from such an experienced person, they help you to study, go that mile extra, do those extra readings, and then voila, you're there. I think.
So I personally remember that Kedar sir was more disturbed when he didn't see your name in the service for the first line. Because he believed that you should be there. So the energy that Kedar sir brings in and the enthu that he brings in is something very difficult to match. It rubs on all of us.
Absolutely.
So how exactly that played a role, and what is your word through Kedar sir?
His energy is so infectious, isn't it? As in, this journey is not easy. It's a very grueling journey. There are times when you're down and you're down to the dumps. And when you see a person with so much experience who's perhaps such a senior person, and he's telling you that, you've got this and that you're destined to do great things. And then when few moments, yes, you lose that confidence also, but then when someone with so much energy puts in such positive words in front of you, I think that just makes that sea of difference. You're just out of your slump and you're again in the grind. I think presence of such personalities in the lives of students is so important, because mentors, I really believe that mentors are the ones who are required. If I were to give an analogy, people can't climb or summit Mount Everest without the help of a Sherpa. I think mentors play that role in the lives of aspirants, and that mentor can be anyone for that matter. Needn't necessarily be from a coaching institute or anything for that specific, but having that mentor, be it a brother who's cracked it, a sibling, a friend, a mentor, I think that makes a sea of difference.
A wonderful way to put it across. The role of a mentor is nothing but a Sherpa who always is along. Present, not present, who keeps you going.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got to that point. 2 questions in terms when we close on the interview. One, how much do the mock interviews help? And though they don't come as questions as such, in building confidence and ideas, how much do you think they help?
I think it makes a candidate ready with respect to being able to articulate himself in a pressure environment. So once or twice or thrice, if you've done that before, on the D-Day, one would not feel very out of place.
Okay. in all the interviews of mock or the final two interviews that you faced, one question you think is a question I'm going to remember for lifetime?
I think this abstract question that I was asked.
So probably for the listeners, that word is a very interesting line. So if you can repeat that for us.
So because at that time the Israel war and the Ukraine war was going on, and so in that context, the examiner or the interviewer asked me. First, he narrated a huge sentence, and the context was set in during the Iraq war period. So he said that okay, so and so things had happened during the Iraq war, and at that point in time, some of the leaders had made this statement. They had said that the morality of the war is illegal, the legality of the war is immoral. So the question was, what is your opinion on it?
Okay. Right. So the morality is illegal and the legality is immoral. Right. Something that's worth listening specific. So this is how the pan out of all the three stages of UPSC civil services has been. We now will get to a certain more in terms of a good fun round of rapid fire. She has a lot of interest on food and food blogging, so Bengalis come with that specific interest. So let's delve a little deep in, and then we close on her personal ideas and an advice that she would want to give all the young generation of aspirants that are coming up. So that's coming up in our last stage, waiting. So sports is something that's very much into the DNA of every Bengali as we understand. So you said badminton, football or badminton?
Badminton.
Okay.
Personal choice.
Okay. So in football, as I've heard, the choice is either East Bengal or Mohan Bagan.
So I'm a Bangal. People who are watching, Bengalis who are watching, they'd be understanding East Bengal. Bangal support East Bengal.
Okay. Right. So food, rasgulla or mishti dai?
Mishti Doi.
Mishti dai. Okay. So a lawyer or a bureaucrat as Diya?
A lawyer turned bureaucrat.
Lawyer turned bureaucrat. Okay. Cinema, theatre?
Cinema.
Cinema. Social media, distraction, enriching?
Depends upon the person using it.
Okay. For you?
Useful.
Okay. Instagram, Facebook?
Instagram. I don't have a Facebook account.
Okay. Right. So for all the young aspirants, what is your view in terms of social media?
It's a very productive, disruptive force, and
That's interestingly put. Productive, disruptive. How do you explain that?
it's very it's disruptive because it does disrupt the way perceptions are framed about so many things. It's productive depending upon how well you want to use it.
So foreign service or police service? Knowing that administrative service is your interest.
I am expecting the police service, so I'm very happy and I'm grateful for that.
Acha. Okay, so there is a trend of politicians entering, bureaucrats entering politics as such. That's happened in Bihar, that's happened in Bengal, that's happened in Odisha. And Bengal is very active for its politics, the good, bad, and ugly, any aspect of it. So, you see a career there?
I don't think so, because as I told, right now I really want to work with the people, for the people, and derive my satisfaction as a permanent executive.
Great. Doctor, father, teacher, mother. So, doctor as a profession, teaching as a profession.
Whichever suits whichever person. I think profession should be curated as per one's aptitude and attitude combined together.
Okay. So, Bengal defines multiple aspects. What is that one defining aspect of Bengal that comes to you?
I think the cultural variety that Bengal portrays and puts forth before the world.
The choice of civil services preparation. You have been in Bengal, you then come to Odisha for your studies. Now Bangalore. General notion of New Delhi. So New Delhi, Bangalore.
Bangalore.
Bangalore. Why Bangalore?
The weather was was and is now becoming again excellent. For a brief period, the weather of Bangalore, as everyone said, nazar lag gayi thi weather ko, but now again it rained today. So, because of the stability and the continuity in the weather patterns in Bangalore, I think that boosts efficiency a lot. Though it was not the determining factor, it was definitely a contributing choice for me. Secondly, I had looked up certain courses that I wanted to do for the civil services preparation. I did not want a lot of pedagogy. I wanted extensive test and writing practice that I had found at that point in time when I moved to Bangalore sometime in late 2018 or early 2019. So at that time I had found out certain courses there. So altogether it was an informative choice for me.
Okay. So without personal biases, Calcutta, Bengaluru, or Bhubaneswar?
Any day Kolkata.
Any day. Okay, Bhubaneswar or Bangalore?
I didn't spend a lot of time in Bhubaneswar. My college was in Cuttack, so Bangalore there.
Your favorite South Indian food?
Ghee puri dosa.
Ghee puri dosa. Okay, awesome. Any best favorite restaurant here in Bangalore?
MTR, the one which is there in between Lal Bagh and the Lal Bagh Road.
The old MTR that
Yes.
Dia is referring to. Okay, so unlimited food, plate meals.
I don't like unlimited food because it restricts the variety. I like to taste little of different types of food.
Okay. So one notion that we South Indians carry of Bengal and Bengali food, it's too much of sweet in everything. You agree with that?
Actually not. There's a lot of savory items in Bengal in whatever food you choose to eat. The Kolkata biryani for one. There are so many different varieties of preparations of fish and other non-veg items, and even in the vegetarian department. It's very savory. Sweet dish is the one which comes at the end, but then that is what defines Bengal also.
So the other notion is fish is vegetarian in Bengal. Fish or chicken?
Personally, I eat chicken because somehow I think it was a childhood episode of a thorn had gotten stuck in my throat, and it was not a very pleasant experience. So I don't eat fish a lot.
Okay, right. So with those brief questions as such, I'm definitely sure that with achieving a certain feat, in your parents' mind, marriage would be up ahead. How far are you looking at that?
Maybe somewhere down the line.
So how do you define now that you've gone through a certain stage of your life and certain stage of your career services as a lawyer, now and as bureaucrat that will very soon be? How would you define a life partner to be?
For me, an ideal life partner is one. I don't really subscribe to the notion of like he completes me or half and half is equal to one. I believe in today's changing times, the equation, if I were to put it in an equation, it should be 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So, a person who is a friend, a person who is supportive, and a person for whom I would want to go the extra mile and support him.
Awesome. Okay, so somebody in service, out of service, anyone?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Bengali cinema, Bollywood?
If I find good Bengali cinema, then I would definitely want to watch that.
Favorite actor?
Favorite actor? Haven't watched movies in a while. I don't really have a favorite actor. I have a favorite genre of movies, and that's sport related movies. So I really enjoy those.
Okay. Saina Nehwal, PV Sindhu?
I think I like both their styles a lot. I like PV Sindhu's aggressiveness. At the same time, I like the calmness which Saina puts on court.
Awesome. Okay, so specifics when it comes to, there is a lot of aggression that Saurav Ganguly comes in, which also is related to. Do you see yourself as that aggressive young woman you want to be, or a calm, curated, to the point that you want to be?
I think the latter, but when aggression is warranted in exceptional situations, yes, that too.
Okay. So the Bengal idea of putting forward things specific when it comes to the national agendas are very clear. And one voice that we are hearing from Bengal, specifically the universities of Bengal, is in terms of the state of the nation as such. How do you define democracy as a lawyer, as a bureaucrat that you would want to be now? And what kind of an India that you would love to be in?
I believe that democracy was one of the simplest definitions that we'd heard. It's government for the people, of the people, by the people. I still stand by it. I think as and when one matures and one reads up a lot, one experiences life, different meanings of this particular phrase unfolds in front of them. I envision an India. I envision a India where people are. The basic standard of living is not a far-fetched dream for majority of the Indians. India is working hard towards that, and I envision an India where there is multiple opportunities of career that is available, and and most of India has access to those opportunities, be it sports, be it bureaucracy, be it a profession in engineering or medicine. I want maximum people in India to have equal opportunity towards all of these dreams.
So that's a wonderful vision of India that Dia is pursuing to be. So the last question of the day, in terms of to all those women out there, to all the girls out there who dream about making big in whatever they want to be, what would be that message that you would want to be?
Be brave to take decisions without fearing whether that's the right decision or wrong decision, because decisions are never right or wrong. You just need to be courageous enough to take a decision and pursue that decision with all your heart, and do not be scared of anything around you.
Wonderful. So that's probably the wonderful note to close upon. Be brave, be courageous, and pursue the decision that you want to take things forward. Wonderful idea that comes in. We have listened to the entire journey that has gone by, the personal understanding that she got in through, and further in all aspects of civil services, and now her personal choices too. Wishing wonderful luck as she pursues her career in civil services.
Thank you,
and
sir.
wishing that the nation gets the best service out of you, and wishing to see you in the greatest pedestals as you head. All the very best from India for IAS.
Thank you so
All
much,
the very
sir.
best to the journey ahead.
Thank you.